All right, let's dive into this explainer and explore one of the most fascinating stories in human history, the totally isolated, unique destiny of the American continent. I mean, think about it. For thousands of years, literally an entire half of the globe was developing completely unaware of the massive empires that were rising and falling over in Europe, Asia, and Africa. We're going to trace this epic journey right from its deepest indigenous roots, where ancient mother civilizations were literally carving their legacy into solid stone, all the way up to a radical new democratic experiment that, as we know, would go on to completely alter the course of human history. So, here's the big question we're looking at today. How exactly did this isolated world build its own glorious, sprawling empires, only to suddenly violently collide with Europe and eventually spark a revolution? It's a profound mystery, really. While Rome was expanding and the Silk Road was bustling, the Americas were just doing their own incredible thing in absolute isolation. We're going to look at how these complex societies thrived, how that sudden transformative collision with European explorers shattered that isolation forever, and how the fallout from that set the stage for something completely unprecedented. Part 1. The Mother Civilizations. Starting our journey down in modern-day Mexico, just take a second to appreciate the sheer chronological scale here. We are talking about deep, deep antiquity, way before anyone from Europe even thought about crossing the Atlantic. While ancient Egypt and Mesopotamia were doing their thing in the East, the Americas were seeing the rise of their own foundational societies. We've got the Olmecs way back in 1200 BCE, the Zapotecs who were pioneering early urban planning at Monte Alban around 100 AD, and of course the incredibly vast, sprawling networks of the ancient Mayans. Let's start with the Olmecs. They're often considered the mother civilization of Native American cultures. We actually don't even know what they called their own leaders because their hieroglyphic writing hasn't been deciphered yet. But what they left behind, it's breathtaking. 17 colossal stone heads. And in Mesoamerican culture, there was this deeply held belief that the head alone could capture a person's emotion, their experience, and their immortal soul. So in a very real way, by carving these massive monuments, these unknown leaders remain immortalized. They're literally enshrined in history forever. Then, building on that incredible groundwork laid by the Olmecs, you have the Mayans. And they engineered massive, bustling metropolises. We're talking about legendary cities here: Tikal, Palenque, Chichen Itza. These places supported populations of anywhere from 2 to 10 million people. That's huge! And their architecture was so deeply tied to their spirituality. Take the uniquely named E7 Sub-Temple, for instance. It was built with 16 plaster stucco masks. And these weren't just decorative flourishes. They were specifically designed to physically capture the souls of their deities, bringing that divine presence right down to the people. Part 2. Empires of the Sun. Moving further south down into the towering Andes Mountains, we see civilizations that didn't just survive in harsh landscapes, they totally mastered them. Down in modern-day Peru and Chile, you had the Mochi civilization. They built these impressive pyramids and used highly advanced agriculture. They actually used bird droppings as a super potent fertilizer, which is pretty ingenious, right? And a bit further south, the Nazca people were etching these massive, mysterious geometric lines and animal shapes right into the reddish-brown desert surface. The true purpose of these vast Nazca lines? It's still one of history's most tantalizing mysteries. Meanwhile, back up north, the Aztecs were busy building Tenochtitlan, a city that would easily rival any European capital at the time. Legend has it, their god, Huitzilopochtli, told them to build their city exactly where they saw an eagle perched on a cactus eating a snake. Well, they found exactly that omen on an island in Lake Texcoco, and what they built there was an absolute engineering marvel. A bustling metropolis with a complex system of canals, huge causeways, and a massive great temple. And to feed everyone, they invented chinampas. These were literally floating gardens sitting right on the shallow waters of the lake, just bursting with maize, beans, and squash. Part 3. First Contact. Now, things take a wild turn. Way back in the early 11th century, the Viking explorer Leif Erikson briefly spent the winter in a place he called Vinland up in modern-day Canada. He did a little trading with the local indigenous people, probably the Inuits, and then he just went home. But jump forward to 1492 and the whole narrative shifts permanently. Christopher Columbus, who was actually looking for a route to India, lands in the Bahamas and is greeted by Lucayan fishermen. This wasn't just a brief visit. This was it. The monumental, world-altering collision of two entirely separate worlds that would never be separated again. Part 4. The Conquistadors. After Columbus arrives, the pacing of history just hits hyperspeed. What started as exploration instantly morphed into a brutal era of conquest. Hernan Cortez shows up on the Aztec shores in 1519. At first, the Aztecs actually greeted him with incredible gifts of gold and silver. They thought the Spaniards might be emissaries of their gods. But Cortez had a terrifyingly swift, violent playbook. By leveraging superior military tech like guns and cannons and rallying indigenous tribes who already hated the Aztecs, the Spanish laid a devastating siege to Tenochtitlan. In just 2 incredibly brutal years, the great Aztec Empire completely collapsed in 1521. And sadly, that blueprint was officially set. Francisco Pizarro wasted absolutely no time replicating Cortez's exact cycle of violence and exploitation to systematically dismantle the vast Incan Empire further south in present-day Peru. The conquistadors had essentially proven that if you have advanced weaponry and you make strategic local alliances, you can overthrow massive, ancient empires almost overnight. But listen, this is absolutely crucial to understand. It wasn't just European weaponry that defeated these native populations. It was something way more insidious. Because Europeans had survived horrific centuries of diseases like the bubonic plague and smallpox, they had developed some immunities. The indigenous peoples of the Americas, because they developed in total isolation, they had zero biological defenses against these bugs. So these unintentional, invisible biohazards spread like wildfire, devastatingly wiping out massive portions of the native populations over time. Part 5. Colonies in the New World. So, with the ancient empires fallen and the indigenous populations tragically decimated, European powers aggressively scrambled to establish permanent, profitable footholds in what they called this New World. By 1607, you have corporate entities and national explorers carving out new destinies right side by side. The English set up Jamestown in Virginia, which was heavily driven by the commercial interests of the Virginia Trading Company. And just 1 year later, right up north, Samuel de Champlain establishes the French colony of Quebec. The Americas were no longer just a zone of conquest, they were fast becoming a highly contested chessboard for European economic and political expansion. Part 6. The Democratic Experiment. All of this colonization, this massive cross-cultural collision, it eventually fostered an environment that was ripe for something completely new. Just look at the compression of history here. It's wild. From that first fateful contact in the Bahamas in 1492, to the crushing fall of the mighty Aztecs in 1521, to the corporate founding of Jamestown in 1607. And then, less than 2 centuries after Jamestown was founded, the American continent rapidly transforms from a collection of heavily taxed European colonies into the staging ground for a full-blown ideological revolution in 1776. On July 4th, 1776, a group of patriots gathered in a room in Philadelphia and boldly declared these immortal words. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. That was a staggering rejection of the old European order of feudalism and kings. Instead, they're proposing a society built on this radical idea of unalienable rights, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Out of this long history of isolation, brutal conquest, and colonization, an entirely new democratic framework was born. We've covered a lot of ground today. We've traced the Americas from the mystical stoneheads of the Olmecs to a rebel room in Philadelphia and, eventually, to a nation that would literally plant a flag on the surface of the moon. This formerly isolated continent became the ultimate crucible for human innovation and governance. So, as we look at the astonishing trajectory of this world, we have to ask ourselves, how will this ongoing democratic experiment continue to shape the frontier of our future? Thanks for joining me on this explainer. I'll see you next time.